Hey guys, welcome back. Hope you all are doing well. This is Mohammad Badruddin back again with another video from OAuth authentication vulnerabilities. So in today's video, we are gonna see what are OAuth grant types. You can see here the OAuth grant types determine the exact sequence of steps that are involved in the OAuth process. Okay, I would highly recommend you guys to see and read this content because this is very important. Another component of OAuth is OAuth scopes. So because you are going to access the information of the user, so you must define the scope before you are going to implement the open authorization, because it is important, right? Because what information you are going to ask to the server like Twitter or Instagram or Facebook, Google, you must identify that, or you must select what information you need for regarding user, so that user can give you the consent. Because if you ask too much information, maybe the user will be worried about it, because it's basically the PII, which is personally identifiable information. So users these days are very conscious about this, that what applications are asking to access about the user. Fine. So the scope could be your contact list. Let's say that I downloaded and installed one third party application in my mobile phone, and with that application I'm going to manage my Twitter handle account. Third party application may be asking the permission for the contact list, for the email, my mobile number, something like this. So this is very important. Fine. So let's go. In this section, we will see only two types of grant types for the OAuth. So the first one is authorization code grant type, and I will directly jump to this picture, which is very important. And if you memorize this picture, the concept will always be with you and you are not gonna forget this. So basically this will tell you the whole process of the OAuth. Okay. So let's say this is the third party application which I installed in my phone, or maybe I'm accessing this application on my browser, and here I am with my browser. So the client application first of all will ask the authorization, and the authorization request will go to the Twitter or Instagram OAuth service, API service. So once this request goes to the OAuth API service, it will redirect us to the login page, okay, where user need to provide the credentials, username and password, maybe email or password. And after providing email address and the password or credentials, the application will ask us, okay, the third party application need to access these are the information, or these are the resources. So it asks the user provide the access on 1 2 3 all this information to the third party application. If users say okay, I agree to that, then the OAuth or / authorization endpoint of the OAuth service API will send one authorization code, which is grant code, to the client application. So once the authorization request is made, this / callback endpoint is already mentioned in the parameter named as redirect URI. So the server will know, okay, if the user provide me the consent, I will send the authorization code to this endpoint of the third party application. And once the authorization code is received from the application now will ask to the Twitter or Instagram, okay, I need one access token. So the third party application will send one request where it will ask for the access token. Then if everything, because user already provide the consent or agree to provide the access on its information, so the application will provide one access token to the third party application. And then whenever this third party application or client application wants to access the user information, it will send one request, which is an API call. And within this request, the third party client application will put the access token. So once this access token will received by the Twitter on slash user info endpoint, or this endpoint could be anything. Okay, so but if you know the sequence or if you know the flow, you will know what request is going for what and what response you receive is for what. Okay, so once it will analyze the API call request, it will see the token, it will validate the token, and the server will know, okay, this request is to access this user information, and then the application will send the user data to the client application, and then the client application will be logged in, or user will be logged in on that application. So all these steps are already written here. You can read about this. Most important part here is all the parameters within that request is already defined here. So let's see, this is gonna be the authorization request, first request, and where you can see there is a client ID. So each and every client application, third-party client application, will have one unique identifier so that it can be identified. Then the redirect URI, which is another parameter, and this parameter basically provide the endpoint on which the authorization server will send the authorization code. Okay, so it's already there. Third parameter is response type, which is code, that means authorization code. And you can see the scope is OpenID profile, and state is also there. So all these parameters are here. Client ID, this is the mandatory parameter containing the unique identifier of the client application. And this value is generated when the client application registers with the OAuth service. If it's not registered, then it will not have the client ID. Fine. Redirect URI, I already mentioned here that this parameter will be set here in the authorization request. So the OAuth service API will know where to send on which endpoint we need to send the authorization code. Fine. Similarly, response type. So determine which kind of response the client application is expecting, and therefore which flow it wants to initiate. So if you see the code, that means this is the authorization code grant type. If you see the response type is equal to implicit, you will know that this is the implicit grant type. The next parameter is scope. As I mentioned before, that this is about the information the third party application need to access about the user. Fine. So the scope used to specify which subset of users data the client application wants to access. And we need to note that these may be custom scopes set by the OAuth provider or standardized scope defined by the OpenID Connect specification. We will jump to the OpenID Connect later while performing or solving the lab. The last part is state. Fine. So it stores a unique unguessable value that is tied to the current session on the client application. So the OAuth service should return this exact value in the response so that it can be along the authorization code. Okay, so it can be matched. So this is the second step where user will provide the credential and provide the consent. Then the authorization code will be granted to the third party application on this endpoint. Fine. And then the client application will ask for the access token. So this request you will see post request for once the client application will ask to the OAuth service API for the access token. And here two parameters are important. The first one is client secret. So the client application must authenticate itself by including the secret key that it was assigned when registering with the OAuth service. So this is basically the client ID, and then the grant type. So if the grant type is authorization code, you will see the value of this parameter as authorization underscore code, otherwise implicit. And then if everything goes well, the application will provide the access token to the third party client application, and you will see this kind of response. Okay. So the OAuth service will validate the access token request. If everything is expected, the server respond by granting the client application an access token with the requested scope. And then the application, the third party application can make the API call to access the user information, and then the resource will be granted by the server like Twitter or Instagram and provide the user information. So this is the complete flow of authorization code grant type. Fine. If you understand this part, then implicit grant type is very easy for you, because you can see everything is same, just from this flow two steps are not there. The first step which is missing here is the request for the authorization code made by the client application and the response of that authorization code. So authorization code mechanism is not here. So what it will do, the client application will directly make the authorization request. Application or OAuth service API will ask user to provide the credentials and provide the consent. If everything goes well and user provide the consent, then the OAuth service API will directly send the access token to the client application without sending the authorization code or without verifying the authorization code. Because in the grant type of authorization code, what happened, once the user provide the consent, at that instant the authorization OAuth service API will send the grant type to the client application on this callback endpoint. And then once the client application will send the request for the access token, it send the authorization code with that request for accessing or for getting the access token. So just these two things are not there, otherwise everything is same. Okay. So what is the difference between implicit grant type and the authorization code grant type? Authorization code grant type is much more secure as comparison to the implicit grant type. Fine. So this is the only thing I would highly recommend to read this content. The next video, we are going to solve the first lab of OAuth authentication vulnerability. Fine. See you in the next video. Bye.